Watch this.
Idahoans could soon see state checks coming into their bank accounts, to help with rising inflation and all that. But is it an actual way to help struggling families or a way to win election points? We asked the University of Idaho professor and the governor's office. You know what they say about a man and his dog? Well, they say a lot about a man and his dog. But one Boise man is saying and searching a lot for his son's dog. They may be more than just lost. Bad check artists, radio concerts, Idaho and Minnesota in a field feud over potatoes. What was happening 100 years ago today? Enough to fill a semi-weekly Caldwell paper. It's officially called an extraordinary session. But lately, they haven't been so extraordinary. They seem to be more ordinary. For the third time in 7 years, Idaho's lawmakers will reconvene outside of normal business hours after the ordinary 3-month-ish meeting at the beginning of the year. And like all other extra verses, this song will have a specific structure. No freewheeling solos allowed. Legislators are going to meet and debate and then vote on a package that includes tax cuts and investments in Idaho education. There's also a third leg to that stool. Another tax rebate for Idahoans to help address inflation, we're told. Something that could happen as soon as September if the lawmakers approve it. So a question we've had, as well as several of you, is how reintroducing money back into Idaho's economy could impact local inflation. Will this be a productive move, or is it merely a political power play before an election? Here's Chief Political Reporter Joe Paris.
By the end of this week, the state of Idaho could be preparing to send another round of rebate checks to Idaho taxpayers. The proposal, a tax rebate of 10% of tax amounts paid in 2020 or $300 for an individual filer, whatever amount is greater. Now, that idea was announced by Governor Brad Little late last week. This week, Idaho lawmakers will vote on the package that includes those rebate checks, as well as other income tax cuts and investments into Idaho education. This is all in the name of addressing inflation, something that Idaho families have struggled with for months. University of Idaho economics expert, Professor Stephen Peterson, he explains the real impact of more than 8% inflation on the average Idaho family.
There would be a loss of purchasing power of about $5,000 for a typical family as a result of the inflation.
Over the past few years, there's been a lot of conversation about stimulus checks and inflation. It's a popular argument that repeated federal stimulus money has accelerated inflation rates. Peterson explains, this proposal is very different than federal COVID checks.
Inflation ultimately is caused by too much money in the system, and that is controlled by the central bank. What we're talking about here is fiscal policy spending, and that does not have much impact on inflation.
So, unlike the federal government printing more money for checks, the proposal in Idaho is to return tax dollars.
The way to look at this is they're reallocating spending. They're not creating new money the way the central bank does and injecting it into the economy. So, and these kind of rebate checks these kinds of processes are self-limiting by their nature. And so I don't see this as being inflationary or causing inflation.
So, fears of the rebate program worsening inflation in Idaho seem unfounded. The proposed legislation isn't a simple fix to the inflation issue Idahoans are seeing, but Peterson says it is impactful, especially for lower-income families.
The rebates going to families will help offset the loss of real income as a result of the overall inflation rate, which I indicated for. There's some simplifying assumptions, but for a typical family, the loss of purchasing power, if this 8.5% holds out year-round for the entire year, will be around $5,000.
So what could the real impact of rebate checks look like in terms of addressing inflation? Could they drive inflation down across Idaho? On a large scale, it appears that won't be the case. However, on the individual or family level, extra money from rebate checks in the pockets of Idahoans could make a big difference right now. Peterson has two easy examples.
Food prices, if we look at food and energy, which impact all Idaho families, but especially the low-income families, Food is now hovering around 11% increase if it holds the whole year. So this could be very helpful to consumer food budgets. And then, as we all know, although gas prices are falling, it still shows a 32.9% increase over where it was a year ago.
Experts like Peterson do caution, in general, about creating new government investment programs as the American economy does tread towards economic downturn. However, just the rebate check concept as a part of this package is considered low risk.
The rebate part of this especially is very low risk, right? It's not going to contribute to inflation, and it's going to help out Idaho families. In a sense, they're getting some of their tax dollars back. So it's hard to argue with it, right?
And to be clear here, the rebate checks are not a done deal. Lawmakers will need to approve it this week. And there appears to be enough support among lawmakers based on the co-sponsors of the pending legislation, but we will see later this week. But all this does bring up a question that I've seen really talked about over the last few years since this was announced. And we're going to go to a question right now from Peggy. She writes to us, #the208. Will retired folks who no longer pay taxes receive any part of the refund if it is approved to give back any of the billions? And this is a big question. Really, everything depends on your situation, but here's what we can tell you, and this is what Governor Little's office told me a few minutes ago. Seniors who do not file state income taxes are eligible for the minimum rebate if they applied for the grocery tax credit. So even if you didn't file your income taxes and you filed Form 24, which we're going to show you right now, you are eligible for this. And here is that Form 24. It may look familiar. This is what you're using if you're 65 and older and you don't apply and have your income taxes filed through the state because maybe you're on Social Security, something like that. Maybe you don't have state income taxes to report. You do still fill out this Form 24 to get your grocery tax credit. So Brian, long story short, even if you don't file income taxes in Idaho, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get a piece of the pie here. Again, though, it's what you filed for 2020. If you have any questions about this, we have all the info right now, ktvb.com.
So the answer to the question is, it is a political ploy, or is it actually helping families? The answer is yes and yes, because they could have done this. Well, I guess they could have done it a couple months ago, but at that point, we didn't know we have nearly $2 billion in surplus.
Right. So this will be helping some families. If this is a political play, it's up for you to decide. Could it have waited? Could it have not waited? Well, it's in the eye of the beholder.
All right, thanks, Joe. All right, so what about this special session and the funding dedicated to education? Governor Little has proposed what he's touting as the largest investment into K-12 public education in state history, $410 million. And if passed, $330 million is going to go towards K-12 schools. The other $80 million is going to go toward post-secondary training for in-demand careers. And those amounts would increase every year by about 3% to keep up with what we just talked about, inflation. On Friday, we got a question from Karen in Boise. So the money that Governor Little and the legislature are giving to public education from the surplus, will that make up for the amount that was taken away from their budget reductions last year? Well, back in 2021. First, the giving will have to come after the approving. This bill needs to pass both the House and the Senate and the signature from the governor, but these things don't usually come together, these special sessions, without some sort of knowing how it's all going to end kind of thing. So all of it is expected to happen. But to Karen's point, lawmakers did just cut $2.5 million from higher education 2 sessions ago, Idaho's 4 public universities, over created concerns of critical race theory being taught there. So yes, there will be more money for colleges and trade schools, but specifically for in-demand careers. So it's not just here's your money back plus more, here's money back, but you got to use it specifically. And it's an increase all around because this year lawmakers approved a $3.4 billion budget for K-12 schools. And this, of course, is going to be an increase of that was an increase of about 11% over the year before. So yes, records were set for education funding during the 3-month regular session, and they're about to set it again in just one day this week. You could probably remember getting your first puppy. The joy, of course, the puppy breath, the lack of sleep, probably. Well, Chase McKinney knew those feelings for about a month, and then his puppy, Sam, went missing. On August 2nd, Sam somehow got out of Chase's apartment on the Boise bench, and she was supposedly seen wandering around the neighborhood shortly after. But then Sam was only seen once since, and it was that one time that led the McKinney family on a search that has led to a story that became about more than just a missing dog, but possibly a kidnapped one. Mid-morning on the Boise bench, and Chico McKinney is midway through another walk.
Can I give you a flyer real quick?
Except he isn't out here for exercise.
She's about 5 months old, so she's probably still pretty small and gangly.
He's out here.
Yeah, we're still looking for her.
Looking for help to find a dog.
Lots of dogs on this street. That gives hope that dog lovers might help out.
For more than a week,
Yeah, every day.
Chico has been
Do you want
on
a flyer? And
and around Kootenai Street, knocking on doors,
everybody's at work.
leaving behind flyers,
It's all right. They're getting flyers on their doorsteps. Hi there.
and talking to anyone who answers their door.
We're looking for a lost lab puppy
Because Chico says
being walked in this area.
that was the last time, and this was the last place Sam was seen.
Someone said they saw her walking on Owyhee and Kootenai, somebody walking her, some college-age kids, they said. So,
Well, thanks to Chico,
but knowing she's alive, or at least hoping and believing she's alive, is helpful.
Sam can also be seen on flyers and posters posted on nearly every corner.
A sweet 5-month-old yellow lab puppy. She's really unique looking. She's got some chocolate lab spots on her left shoulder,
She's also a Dudley.
which means she doesn't have pigment in her nose, around her lips, and around her eyes.
You see, Sam belongs to Chico's son, Chase, who lives about a half-mile from here.
He had just had her for less than a month when she got out.
She was a gift from his girlfriend.
It was my son's first puppy, you know, and he was just crushed when she got out, and he feels terrible about the situation.
Within hours, they were asking around about Sam.
She was seen being walked in this neighborhood, and I'm just kind of canvassing.
People handing out and putting up posters for lost pets isn't anything out of the ordinary. But Chico says it's a text message they received exactly a week later that made the search for Sam suspicious.
The first message said, "Is there still a reward for her?" Which normally people say, "Hey, I found your dog," and really excited about it, but this person, "Is there still a reward?"
The pictures they sent proved Sam was alive, but those that had her wanted proof of something else.
And then they went and said, "Well, I need proof of ownership. Can you please send us the breeder information?" And we weren't comfortable giving that information, so we asked to meet them in person to show them all the proof of ownership.
But as soon as you said, well, let's meet in person, they said,
Within less than 2 minutes, we got a text from another number trying to throw us off the trail saying that she was dead.
the person on the other side of this message seemed to be showing some remorse for the situation, saying, she's in the backyard, buried. She's been there a few days now. My friends just wanted the reward. I'm truly sorry. That's when Chico got the police involved.
They've been great about being helpful, but they're limited on what they can do. They weren't able to trace those numbers.
And those who claim to have Sam, Chico says, have since gone silent.
It's been over a week since we've had any contact with them.
That silence, though,
Did I already bug you about Sam?
hasn't stopped Chico
Yeah, we got one. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
from canvassing the Kootenai area.
And then they told her she was dead because they didn't want us pursuing it,
Oh,
which
how do you say that to somebody?
grasping at any straw we can to try to get her back.
Until Chico and his family can wrap their arms around Sam again.
As long as it takes, really. I mean, I don't think we'll give up until. How you doing? We don't think there's any hope. Good, thanks. And right now, I still feel like there's hope.
Boise police are still working on the case and trying to determine if, in fact, the dog was taken from Chase's apartment. As for the text messages, they confirmed they came from an internet-based phone number, therefore not easy to trace. But they also have hope. They hope if anyone sees Sam, and Chico tells us they had a report as far away as State and Collister area, they hope they can call Ada County Non-Emergency Dispatch or Crime Stoppers. You can also call the number that's on the flyers and the posters scattered around the Boise Bench area, 208-860-3197. Chico says whatever anger he feels now towards someone who would be this cruel about his son's dog, he says all that will go away if that someone would do the right thing and return her. Chico says he would shake their hand and say thank you. He just wants the dog back. The who's who about town and their stuff. The price of potatoes. Lots of things. What made the front page of the paper 100 years ago? We're perusing the faceless Facebook of a century ago. But there's no need to wait for the paper to come out. Just wait for the end of the show, and we'll share some of the messages you've sent us today. And there's still time to get them in. 208-321-5614. That's the number. Send us your questions, your comments, even your story ideas. We'll take and listen to them all. But just make sure you include your name and the hashtag #the208. Oh, you've likely done it. You get all caught up in the interwebs, and draw down a rabbit hole, and end up somewhere completely unlike where you planned, where you started. Kind of how we ended up today, stumbling upon old newspaper archives, weeklies and semi-weeklies from around the state. So we decided to consider it, no, not a waste of time, and christen it instead Headlines from 100 years ago. On the front page of the Caldwell Tribune, Bill Hawks returned home with oddities after 4 years of service in Asia Minor. Some Russian silver, a few Turkish garments, and a prized possession of a carving of Christ. Charles Greenfield, a known bad check artist who turned funds of $5 into $500, was seen in Homedale. And 2 youths engage in night work. Well, that endeavor, done in darkness, is actually a detailed description of grand theft auto and armed robbery of the Maui service station. But halfway down the 5th column, we see potatoes from Minnesota go. New competition for Idaho is now in field and headed to the Chicago market, where Idaho spuds were selling for $1.70, but New Jersey tubers were selling for 10 to 20 cents more because they travel better, meaning Minnesota tater farmers were hoping their close proximity would lead to more cash in their pocket. So in 1922, those potato prices were about $1 lower than the year before, according to USDA. Exciting stuff. And Idaho didn't really ship out a whole lot of potatoes until, well, mid-September to the Midwest. Idaho had about a 10-year head start, by the way, at growing potatoes over Minnesota. And the Gem State did not lose fertile ground to the land of 1,000 lakes, 10,000 lakes. 1,000 lakes? 10,000 lakes. That year, any other year, doesn't matter. Idaho and Washington combines. They combined for accounting for about 55% of potatoes grown in the United States. Together, 1 and 2. Minnesota, only about 4% of the country's potatoes, which is good enough for the 8th spot. All right, this is a real thing. This month has been hot. They normally call this time of year about the dog days of summer, you know, just kind of the waning days of, well, what is kind of supposed to be summer, where we just kind of wait it out, right? But it's usually not this hot. We're going to go over to Bree Eggers because I'm imagining this month, Bree, is going to go down in the record books, right?
Dog days of summer because we're still panting.
Exactly, like we're all just laying around tired of it already.
I know. And I've been getting all the comments and people say, this has got to be the hottest August I can remember. I can't remember any hotter August. And you would be right, because records go back to 1875, 1877, so around 145-ish years. We're talking about a lot of records here. And where we're sitting right now, with 3 days left to go down in the books for the month of August, 82 degrees is an average temperature. That's all the morning lows, all the afternoon highs wrapped into one nice big number. And you notice that we're so far above that current #1 spot, which I have here at #2, 2001, with an average temperature of 78.7 degrees. So that means it is very likely this August will go down in the record books, not just in the top spot, but also as the only August on record for Boise with an average temperature of 80 degrees or hotter. And I think we'll get there. Again, I mentioned today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, the last 3 days to go down in the books for August, and we're headed back to add more to the triple-digit tally for this summer so far. Even as we kick off the month of September, we have some daily records that are well within reach. For example, Friday ahead of us. Now, you remember June, when spring was really lingering. It was a lingering June. You'll notice that in this data dump here, 2022 doesn't even make the list of the top 10. In fact, it was only the 45th warmest June on record for Boise. So that means it had to be that much hotter through the month of July to make it to the 8th spot here for the hottest Julys on record for Boise. And again, the hottest August on record, very likely within reach. So what does that mean for the entire summer? June's a throwaway month. July and August, the heat was on, and we're currently sitting somewhere within the top 5 hottest summers on record for Boise. So far from the #1 spot, we won't make it there, but still significant. Last year, the hottest summer on record, and this year, somewhere within the top 5 hottest. And we're going to continue to track those triple-digit temperatures as we make our way into meteorological fall. Brian?
Man, August this summer, just blowing it out of the water. Speaking of water, this is kind of the time of year you want to enjoy floating the Boise River to kind of cool off, especially this week because of these 100-degree temperatures. But you have 1 week left before they kind of shut down the river for services. Not that they shut down the river, they don't really do that. But if you want access to, rafts and tubes and all that kind of stuff to rent at Barber Park, well, you got 1 week left to take advantage of that. Boise Parks and Rec says Monday is going to be the last day to rent those services and the shuttle service between Ann Morrison and Barber Park. You can still technically float the river anytime, but you do so at your own risk and without all of the amenities, and probably have to pick up your derriere a few times along the river. Why close these areas, the amenities, when the weather's still this warm and enough to float it? Well, the water levels is one reason. It's around this time of year, those water levels start to really drop significantly because the water in the Boise River comes from the Boise Basin reservoir system. And right now, those reservoirs are dropping water quickly as the irrigation season comes to an end. And so you'll start to see that taper off in the river as well. What does it have to do with the float season? It means there's less water in the river. So pretty shallow, as I mentioned. You're going to have to pick your stuff up, including yourself, and kind of walk through or around sections of the river. It's kind of the floater's version of the walk of shame, if you will. Oh, welcome back. Final moments of the show. Time to talk about your comments. Let's get right to them. A lot of people questioning the special session going on this week and what they're going to do with that money and the tax rebates, like this one from Joe. We've had several rebates from the state. Anyone else thinking they're overtaxing us and then giving part of it back, giving back what was previously ours? Hey, legislators, don't break your arms while patting yourselves on the back. Well, Joe, we talked a little bit about this last week about overtaxing, and part of this package will include a $2,500 deduction in your taxes plus a 5.8 flat tax all across the board. Right now, our tax rates broken up into 4 brackets. 6% being the highest, went down from 6.5 to 6. This would include a flat tax now of 5.8% across the board. So yeah, they're going to reduce your taxes. Why isn't anyone talking about using some of the surplus tax money to pay off all the school bonds and levies? That's some real property tax relief. Pay the bills before refunding money, says Clarence Orton. A lot of people coming up with ideas on this as well. We heard about free school lunches. We talked about getting rid of the grocery tax as well. This teacher here wants her AC system fixed at her school because, well, the temperature gets up to 80 degrees inside when it's this hot outside. We'll see you tomorrow.